Hi, Kain.
Hello.
Welcome to the Defiant podcast. It's great to have you on again.
Yeah, thank you.
Obviously, you're the founder of Synthetix, but now you started a new protocol, dApp Infinex.
That's right.
I'd love just a brief overview of both to get us started.
Yeah, so Synthetix was one of the OG DeFi projects, right?
Mm-hmm.
Started off as a stable coin, evolved into synthetic assets, and now is a perpetuals protocol. Been around for a long time, and I think one of the kind of longest running contracts on Ethereum at this point. But about a year ago, I sort of took a step back and was looking at the space and what was missing, what was there still to build. And the conclusion that I came to was that we built a lot of the infrastructure, right? The protocols are really robust. You've got, Aave, Uniswap, all of the primitives that we need are there. But the thing that's still missing is UX. And so we still have a lot of people that are living on centralized exchanges. There might be daily active users, but they're daily active users of Coinbase or Binance or Bybit. And that there's a subset of on-chain people, but the vast majority of, even crypto natives, late in the cycle, are mainly using centralized exchanges. And so the idea was to build something that could replicate the centralized exchange UX. So have very simple onboarding, simple deposit flow in and out of the platform. And so we built that now, and we're just in the process of rolling it out.
Nice. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
Do Synthetix and Infinex interact at all, or are they completely separate?
So the genesis of Infinex was actually Synthetix. So the original idea was to build a wrapper that would replicate a centralized exchange on Synthetix. The idea was that liquidity on decentralized exchanges has gotten to the point now where it can compete with centralized exchanges, but the UX was missing. But as we started building it, and took probably 6 to 9 months, what I realized is that there was actually a much bigger opportunity. That the same thing is true for lending protocols and NFTs and a lot of other things, that if we could build a UX layer on top of all of these on-chain protocols, that it would be really valuable for everything. So rather than focusing on a narrow aspect of crypto like perpetuals, roll out everything. And so eventually we will integrate Synthetix, but we're also integrating things like Jupiter, and as I said, Aave, lending protocols, Camino, there's a bunch of different things we're looking to do.
Nice. Okay, and so Infinex now is in its launch phase, which I understand has different phases within it, right?
Yes, yeah, that's right.
So there was the first part of it, which was, I think, the waitlist jump.
That's speeder on the wait list, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And so, how did that go? How much TVL were you able to attract? What were kind of the takeaways from it?
Yeah, so one interesting thing is we use Passkeys for onboarding. We made a decision earlier in the year that the time was right to pivot to Passkeys. So we don't have usernames and passwords or other auth methods, and that's meant that it's actually quite Sybil resistant. It's hard to bot that. And so what we found is that in the first, I think, 10 days, we hit about 100 mil TVL, but that came from 10,000 accounts.
Wow.
So a lot of protocols, you might have 100 mil TVL and 1 million accounts, right? Because people are just, rolling out as many accounts as they can for Sybil, hoping for points or something like that. So we actually have a fairly small concentration of users, but still, a very good TVL.
And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you designed your launch process, your incentives, point system. I saw that your governance system is with an NFT rather than a token. So I think that's all super interesting. And also you probably had the most experience with incentives, or maybe the longest, since you were one of the first to do
yield farming
on Synthetix. So I love your thinking around that.
I think I wanted to bring back something that was fun. right? I got called out for like referencing DeFi Summer too much, so I won't reference DeFi Summer. But I think the early incentive schemes, when DeFi, even like DeFi 1.0, and then there was that DeFi 2.0 phase, right? Like Ohm and things like that. Those incentive schemes were really fun and complex and interesting, and it wasn't clear what the best way to play it was, right? So there were these, very interesting mechanism designs that, meant that the game theory was complicated and fun, and people were kind of discovering in real time, like, what's the best strategy? And, there was a lot of disagreement. And I think that creates interest, right? People are like, if I don't know if the optimal way is just deposit some money, across 1,000 accounts and like do a bunch of like transaction washing or something, it's just not that interesting. It's going to be sort of industrially farmed by, bot swarms, basically. Whereas if it's something that's a bit harder, a bit more confusing, and even I think with Crate Realm, which is our current campaign, it's not actually that interesting to a bot farm, right? Because it's not clear what the outcome is going to be. There's no, even with points, there's sort of, there's like whales market. There's things where you can go, okay, well, if I'm a bot farmer and I put this much money in, I can expect to get this much ROI. Like we've tried to design it so that it's a bit more opaque and a bit harder to understand, which, from my personal experience of like the OG yield farming days, that was really fun. We've also introduced something to make it a bit more random. So we use the Pith entropy contract, which is a way of making it not as much of a whale game. So, whales are getting more crates, so they have more opportunity, but we've had people that have opened like 80 crates and gotten a patron NFT. And so the idea behind this whole campaign is basically to find the people who are engaged, who want to try new things, who want to participate in governance, want to do all of this fun stuff and find it interesting, rather than basically paying for metrics and having bots just attack it, right? We want like genuine users who are engaged, and in order to do that, it has to be a bit fun. And so we've kind of done that. I think we've nailed it, and it is fun. And as I said, we've had people that have opened 80 crates and gotten something really cool out of it. What we're also doing is a token sale. So we're basically going to allow people to buy this governance NFT, right? Which is an interesting approach, right? It's something that people haven't tried for a while. But my view is that if we gate that sale to people who are engaged, who are playing this game and who are farming access to that game, then it's a kind of a closed loop of very engaged users who can participate.
Okay, so you mentioned different things that I just want to clarify. So the crates, what are those?
So, what are crates, right?
Right. What does the NFT do?
Yep.
And then, maybe more details on the token sale.
Yeah, so I think one of the critical things with governance is you want to be credibly neutral, right? Interestingly, though, when we were designing Synthetix governance back in the day, and this goes for like Maker and Aave, it's very narrowly focused, right? You're talking about like parameterization around a DeFi protocol. Should we have this high of an interest rate, or this much emissions, or whatever? With something that's more like a wallet or a platform that will integrate a lot of different things, it's even more important to be credibly neutral. You want a protocol on Solana to feel like it's going to be treated the same as a protocol on Aptos, right? Or on Ethereum, or Arbitrum or Optimism, and that requires like a very broad distribution of governance. If you only have one narrow slice of the community, if it's just ETH maxis, it's going to be hard to get engagement from those other communities. So we've tried really hard, doing things like incentivizing meme coins, right? We launched with Solana support, and we're rolling out support for other networks. So the governance token is really designed to get like as wide distribution of governance power as possible.
Interesting. Okay.
That's the idea.
And then the crates are just
What
like
are the crates?
yeah.
So the idea was that we did a points farming campaign, like a classical, it's been around for 18 months or whatever, points farming, where, you were basically farming like linear distribution of points, right? And so the more TVL you put in, the more points you got, the more NFTs you got. We wanted to do something that added a bit more randomness and fun to it. So we basically designed a system where you are farming crates, and crates have different probabilities of having prizes in them, right? So we've got prizes like pudgy penguins, or little pudgies, I should say. We've got things like ETH and Sol, meme coins. So if you are someone who doesn't necessarily have a lot of TVL, you still have a chance of getting something, as opposed to having like a purely linear distribution where someone who puts in $5,000 versus someone who puts in $5 million is not going to have access. Right? So
it's like in addition to points, you're also giving out these crates that have like random prizes.
Random prizes in it, yeah. And the prizes, so the crates are basically gating access to this token sale that we're doing, right?
So is it like crate holders are the only ones who can buy the token?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have to have opened crates to be able to access it. And so we've got 3 different categories of like NFT related, we call it the patron NFT. So you can just win the NFT. So you can win governance tokens. If you're lucky and you open a crate and it's got a governance token in it, you've got that. The other one is you get a mint pass, where if you have a mint pass, when the mint opens, you're guaranteed access to mint it. And the third one is a ticket, which is going to be kind of like a randomized draw of who will be able to mint. Because NFT mints, you need to gate it some way, right? There's a finite number of NFTs that can be minted, and we need to make sure that the distribution is not captured by a small group of people, basically.
So why did you decide to make your governance token an NFT?
Good question. I think there are probably a couple of reasons. I wanted something that was going to be at the beginning as purely governance related as possible, right? And one of the nice things about NFTs is that they don't really trade. There's marketplaces like OpenSea and Blur, but they're not listed on exchanges, right? It's not as easy for it to turn into a speculative instrument. It's really, just there to be, something that governs the platform. And again, in the early days especially, we need the platform to be credibly neutral. So the people who are holding the governance token are really focused on which of these integrations are we choosing, especially when it comes to like conflicts of interest, right? Like I'm an SNX holder, are we going to integrate Synthetix, or are we going to integrate Hyperliquid or GMX or DYDX, right? We need to make sure that governance power is distributed so that those decisions are, are fair, basically, and that we're like looking at all of the things on the merit.
How many NFTs will you issue?
There's 100,000, and of those in the token sale, there will be, depending on the way that it plays out, I think somewhere between 45,000 and 60,000 will be sold.
Oh, okay, and the rest you'll have in your treasury?
Yeah, it'll be treasury distribution, team distribution, incentives. We did some airdropping stuff, so there's like a token distribution chart that's available. So
okay, what's the timeline for the token sale?
Good question. There isn't a fixed date right now. So we have a governance process. We've got a council-based governance. I'm sure you're not surprised to hear that. And so the process of like deciding all of the final components of the sale is still happening. I think there was a governance proposal that passed a couple of weeks ago that like finalized the distribution, but not the actual timeline. If I had to guess, I would say like late August, early September, something like that.
Okay, but pretty soon.
Pretty soon, yeah, like this year for sure, yeah.
Okay. CK Verify is revolutionizing how proofs are verified, making Web3 networks faster and more efficient. At its core is a modular system designed to decouple proof verification from execution and settlement layers, offloading the heavy lifting of proof verification to a separate network. CK Verify cuts down the associated cost by over 90%, offering huge savings and a more robust network performance for Web3 networks, and it is live on testnet. Visit their website today to learn more. After that, will you start rolling out your integrations?
Exactly, yeah. So there's a method to the madness, I think, of like doing this first before we do the integrations. if we have that wide distribution and we have the governance kind of distributed to people who get what we're trying to do, like get the vision early, I think that's the optimal, like those are the people that are there for, the right reasons, I guess, right? If we go and do a bunch of integrations and things go really well, then you get back into like this speculative aspect of like, oh, the project's doing really well, and so I want to participate, et cetera. So we're trying to like balance, getting the right people in who are like, we see what you're doing, right? We see, we want to be participating in this thing.
Right, makes sense. Okay, and then do you have a plan for what you want to roll out first?
So there's already a couple of integrations that are supported that were needed for like platform level things. So Wormhole and Curve are both supported for our like, it's non-custodial. And the way that we have set it up is that if for example, all of our infrastructure, there's a whole bunch of off-chain infrastructure to support this. If that infra is nuked and just disappears, your funds are in a smart account that is yours. They're not commingled. Like you have a smart account that's across 6 chains right now, and eventually could be on 20 chains. So you might have assets spread across multiple different chains doing different things. We need for you to be able to turn up and execute directly on those contracts a withdrawal call so that you can get all your funds out, even if we're not there, right? We don't want there to be like any chance of censorship or whatever. It has to be purely non-custodial. And so, setting things up in that way has meant that we need Curve to be able to like swap everything out into USDC. So if you've got different stable coins, we need to be able to go to a stable pool and swap it because we use CCTP and Wormhole to basically extract all of the funds across all those chains and bridge them back to, if for you it might be mainnet, right? You're like, I want to be on mainnet, and so you literally go and make that function call on all the contracts, roll it all up into USDC and pull it out. And so we've got some like integrations that were required for platform support. Then we've got some other stuff that's in R&D, like Jupiter on Solana. So we have a Solana team that have been doing a bunch of integration work. We've got some other stuff that's being worked on. Nothing is approved yet through governance. So it's all kind of in the R&D phase. But I think for us to be able to compete with a centralized exchange, there's certain functionality we need to have. So we need to have spot, we need to have perps, we need to probably have some staking, we need to have maybe lending or margin, the ability to deposit into like Aave or something like that. Once we've got that core functionality, then we can start doing the fun stuff.
Okay. Can you explain a bit more what just like the broader vision of Infinex is? So I understand, okay, it's a non-custodial account that allows users to access to different DeFi apps wherever they are, right? Like it's like a
on whatever chain,
multi-chain dApps. So yeah, like if this goes well, like what does this look like in a few years from now?
So I think that we finally have all the infrastructure that we need to be able to compete with the centralized exchange, right? For the last decade and a half, since Mt. Gox, basically, the vast majority of crypto activity has happened off-chain in a database, right? Now, there's very good reasons for that, and I think that there are advantages to being in a centralized exchange around security for a user who is not comfortable with self-custody, right? But the tech is now there where we can give people self-custody and also security. We can stop you from rugging yourself, but we can ensure that no one can rug you, right? And for me, it was probably FTX that like really kind of was the tipping point where I was like, FTX blew up and everyone was like, YOLO, back to Binance. And it was like, no, like this is not okay, right? Like you can't have like this giant fraud where a bunch of people's money is stolen and then people just hop over to a different centralized exchange. We have to do something better. And just hoping that everyone's going to get hardware wallets is not, it hasn't worked yet and it's not like there, right? So my view is that in the later part of this cycle, as new people come, right now this is all crypto native people, right? But as the cycle progresses, we will have new people turning up. my goal is that when a new person turns up and your friend from high school is like, I want to buy some Bitcoin, instead of saying, go and self-custody and get a ledger or whatever, or instead of saying, go to Coinbase, you can say, go to Infinex because it's self-custodial, right? You don't need to worry about someone stealing your money, but also you can be confident that they won't make a mistake that will cause them to lose their funds. That's the goal. If we can do that and we can get hundreds of thousands of new users onboarded and have a bunch of assets in the platform, then we have distribution power, right? In a way that like wallets have never really had before. MetaMask has this a little bit with MetaMask swaps, but MetaMask can't really point you at Aave. Right? It certainly can't point you at some novel new DeFi primitive that's emerged, right? And so if we have that distribution power, I think it's going to be an incredible thing for new protocols that are emerging where we can actually point attention at them. If you think about the distribution power that, say, Binance has had, for the last 5 or 6 years, all of that distribution power is about token price. If you're, I don't know, I'll pick a random token that won't be triggering. If you're let's say Doge, right? Binance can point attention at Doge, the token, for the token price, right? But it's not going to do anything for the chain, right? It's not creating activity on Doge chain doesn't do anything. But if it were trying to like have active users and have activity or like build DeFi, right? Binance doesn't care about that. They just care about token price. They can point attention at the token and make the number go up, but that's it. If you have a wallet that has the ability to point attention not at the token, but at the actual protocol, then all of a sudden you've got a very powerful distribution mechanism. And so that's the long-term vision, is to be able to help new protocols to bootstrap and to be able to ensure that new entrants are doing things on-chain and not in someone's database.
It's interesting that it seems that you want to compete with centralized exchanges as like an on-ramp onto crypto, but at the same time, you're also replacing the function of non-custodial wallets, which have been the way, like the gateway to DeFi. But like you said, in not a very organized way. It's more kind of up to the user where they want to go. But you want to create more visibility for all of the different DeFi protocols out there. It's like a really ambitious vision.
It is.
But it's also trying to do like so much, right? So on the like on-ramp side of things, how can you compete with centralized exchanges in terms of just like ease of use and also like security? Like you mentioned, like that's a big part of it. But for newbies, I don't know. It's just like it's hard to get people to take care of their own seed phrase and just like deal with the whole on-chain experience. So how do we do that?
We abstract it away completely.
Okay.
Like there's no gas, there's no seed phrases. We use Passkeys. So we think the Passkeys are ready now, right? And if you think about what Passkeys are, it's really like Web3 tech that's been brought back, into Web2, right? You have a cryptographic token that represents your identity that's stored in a hardware device in a secure enclave, and it is not phishable. You're not going to accidentally write it down and lose it or put it into LastPass or something like that. Like it is a cryptographic token that you can store somewhere.
So it's like a physical device?
It can be on a physical device. Like a passkey can be stored on like a YubiKey, right? But your iPhone has the ability to store a passkey in iCloud, basically. Okay. Like on a, it can be a cloud-based system, but it's also stored in the secure enclave of the phone itself, right? And so you can't have someone trick you into going to, Uniswap with like a one instead, like that sort of all of those games that people play with like phishing sites and phishing links. It's not possible. You can't be phished, right? So that cuts out a lot of that. You also can't be tricked into writing down your seed phrase, right, and giving it to someone. That you can't accidentally give them your private key. So there's a whole bunch of things that, and the people who are designing this are Apple, Microsoft, Google, like They've got resources to make sure that this is, and they've got the incentives to make sure that this is the most secure way. And like all of a sudden you have all of the incentives in large players aligned to like solve this problem, right? And we're just tapping into it. We're saying, let's leverage that tech, bring it across into crypto, and allow you to have a passkey that unlocks a private key. And so we use Turnkey, which is built by the same people who built Coinbase Custody. They have secure private key storage that's non-custodial. We are able to unlock your private key with your passkey that's in your iPhone. Right? And you can now do transactions via Turnkey. You don't need to write down a seed phrase. You don't need to chisel it in stone and bury it in your backyard. You don't need any of that crazy stuff. And so for the average user, when you log into Infinex, you just pull up a web page, you click log in, it finds your passkey on your device or in your password manager or whatever. You can log in cross-device. You can go to your laptop and through iCloud log in. You don't need to plug in a hardware wallet or anything like that. You certainly don't need to like sign in by signing a transaction or whatever. Once you're in, you just click a button and we've got all gas is abstracted, all bridging, all chains. You just click a button and do the thing.
Nice.
And so the actual UX is much more similar to a centralized exchange. Right? It's Web 2 UX. Click a button, thing happens. You click a different button, a different thing happens. It's much easier. You don't get signing prompts and all that sort of stuff.
Awesome. So you'll be subsidizing all gas for users?
So this is the funny thing, right? Everyone asks that question. They're like, but who's paying for the gas?
Yeah.
The gas is so cheap. It is crazy how cheap it is now. We put people in the places where things are cheapest, right? So a lot of our computation for some of the crate campaigns, we have 5 million crates. We've had tens of thousands of crate opening transactions. We've used 10K of gas. Gas is a solved problem now, right?
But what if governance votes to add some Ethereum mainnet?
For sure. So absolutely, if people are doing things on mainnet, then it becomes more expensive, right? But my view is that the people who are still on mainnet are mainly whales, right? Most people have migrated off to other places, right? If you're a whale and you want to deposit $50 million into Infinex, we'll pay the $100 for you to do that. That's a valuable user. The ROI is proportional to the assets the person's depositing, right? So, most people, and the good thing is, once the assets are on Infinex, then we can help you to actually make sure that you're doing the transaction in the place where you should be doing it, right? On Arbitrum or Optimism or Base or Blast or wherever that thing is, because people, and I put myself in this category, who have been around for a long time are still on mainnet. Most of my assets are still on mainnet in a Gnosis safe, right? So if I were able to deposit into Infinex and very easily do things on other chains, I'd be more likely to do it, right? So we can help to ease the whales off mainnet, their mainnet addiction, and into L2s, right? But even still, even factoring in mainnet, mainnet gas prices have gone down because everyone is over
that's
on
been
L2s.
Such an interesting trend.
We've spent literally 10 grand on gas, and we've done thousands and thousands of transactions, deploying contracts everywhere. It's genuinely a solved problem.
Protocol 20 introduces Soroban, which is Stellar's cutting-edge smart contracts platform. This creates new surface area for innovation and provides new opportunities for developers to build protocols and products that create access to everyday financial services. So it means a gradual increase in transaction capacity and a chance to fine-tune applications. And it's the most transformative upgrade to the Stellar network to date. Woohoo!
Okay, and then how do you make money? It's a
good question.
Fee or
It's, at the moment, making money is not the end goal, right? At the moment, it's about distribution. So we want to create as much incentive as possible for people to sign up. This is a very straightforward growth proposition, right? So you want to subsidize growth. We don't want to add any friction. And this is the interesting thing about gas prices is going from, say, 10 cents to 1 cent to a tenth of a cent. There's a quantitative change there, right? Okay, 10 cents feels I'm now going to think about it. 1 cent to a tenth of a cent, you don't need to think about it. But there's still a psychological cost to having to, think, okay, I'm paying for this transaction, right? If you remove that completely, you just click a button and do the thing. At a tenth of a cent, you can click buttons all day. Like you're not going to, burn any money, but it just allows you to do the thing, and it becomes psychologically much less friction, right?
Yeah.
You're not presented with a choice of, do I want to do this? Do I want to spend the 10th of a cent to do it? Like, yes, you click the button, you want to do it. If we abstract that away, especially if we then abstract away moving between different chains, we just put people in the place where they should be. And it's funny, I was on a podcast in the Solana ecosystem a couple weeks ago, and I was explaining how the Solana deposit on the Solana contracts that the person had made was actually allowing them to farm on base. And they were like, I don't know if I like it, but it was like so abstracted that it wasn't even clear, right? But they were like, but I deposited on Solana, like why is it doing something over here? We are able to do things by abstracting this away where, you can deposit on Arbitrum and you can be playing a game on Blast. And you don't even need to worry about that. Like, it's not your problem. You shouldn't care. You should just care that I want to do this thing, right? So the tech is there, and it's been there for the last year, I would say, to be able to do this. But it just needed someone to have the incentive to put it all together. And having built a protocol and seen how painful building UX is for many years, I felt like I was in a pretty good position to start from the UX layer and move back rather than starting from protocol and trying to move up into UX.
Sounds super interesting. Excited to see how this all looks and feels. But I mean, like the way you're describing it, it does feel like a huge improvement from what we have today in DeFi.
It's really interesting because there's two groups of people right now that we're talking to. One is someone who's actually used the platform, and then the other is someone who's like heard about it and it's like conceptually interesting. The difference is like crazy. Once someone's used it, they're like, this is amazing. So we've been trying to, like anything in crypto, it's hard to get people's attention. Everyone's attention poor, everyone's time poor. So we've been really working hard to like do things that don't scale and like literally onboard people one by one by one by one. And we've got a bunch of people at EthCC running around onboarding people because it is like a 0 to 1 moment.
But like you right now, what can you do?
You can play this yield farming game.
Okay.
That's it. You can't actually do transactions. You can't do that stuff. You can just play. But the actual platform is the product right now.
Okay.
Like the platform itself, when you do it and you realize, I can pick up my phone and log in, and then I'm at my laptop and I can log in and check to see what's happening. It's an aha moment. You're like, how? Of course. Like, there's no other thing that you do except in crypto where you log into Gmail and then you go to another device and you're like, I can't log into Gmail. I don't have my hardware key or whatever, right? Like you're just used to being able to access a cloud-based platform on any device, right? And like Infinex right now solves that. Like you can literally go to any device and just log in, and if it's in your iCloud, or if it's if you're using Android, like Android shares Passkeys around. So it's just getting better and better as well.
Okay, so it sounds like your perspective on crypto UX and how to get it to mainstream is that it really does need to feel like any other application on the internet, because there's been this debate like that's been ongoing for years. That's like, okay, what does crypto UX look like? Like, should crypto just like embrace its weirdness and like people should maybe just get used to this new paradigm and I think this is an interesting perspective too. That's like, no, like this is something that's different, so we should be upfront about it, and people interacting with, like confirming transactions, paying gas, that just like tells people what they're doing, and there's more transparency. And then, there's kind of the other side of the debate, which looks like what you're taking is like no, it just needs to be as simple as possible.
Well, I've gone back and forth on this, in fairness, right? Like, you can definitely search and find tweets where I'm like, no, it's good that people are signing transactions. Honestly, that was cope. Like, I had no other choice. What else could I say? We had to sign transactions. We had no way to abstract away signing, right? So if you go back to like 2020, 2021, I'm sure I was saying all kinds of crazy stuff. The UX, honestly, is in the ability to do something permissionlessly with money, right? The fact that you can take money and you can put it into Aave, and you can borrow a different asset, and you can do things like that in this decentralized platform, that's the UX. Like, that's the job to be done, right? Like, that's the thing that a person wants to do. Forcing them to go through weird hoops and sign things, like, honestly, it's cope. Like, it's not needed, right? Like, if I want to put some USDC in Aave and borrow some ETH, and I can click a button and do it, that's just better UX. There is no possible justification for it. You could say maybe back in the day that it's important for people to understand what's happening in the background, right? But I also think that's wrong. Like, I've come to the belief that that's wrong. People don't need, I don't understand how Cloudflare works, right? Like, at a very fundamental level, like, their load balancing and distribution, and like they've got data, like, you know, could I sit there for 3 months and like read about like how their architecture is set up in a way to like have all of these different you know, failover nodes and everything? Like, yes, but like,
but why?
Why? Like, to what end, right? Like, why would I be doing that when I can deploy something to Cloudflare and know that, like, no matter where someone is in the world, that it's going to be performant and that it will scale based on, like, that's their job, right? And so, you know, and that's me as like someone who has a need for infrastructure, right? And I still shouldn't need to know, as a consumer of infrastructure services, how that infrastructure is working. Like, that's their job, right? The idea that like an end consumer should understand how Cloudflare works is madness, right? And so, you know, when there was no choice, when people had to be onboarded via seed phrases and all of this stuff, then yes, then I agree, right? If you're taking a huge risk, we need to make sure that you understand the risk. But if you're not taking a huge risk, if you're using a passkey, which is the same exact way that you log into Facebook or Twitter or Gmail, then no, you don't need to know how it works. You just log in and do the thing.
Are you ready to revolutionize how you interact with live content? Introducing PlayFi, where AI meets blockchain to unlock real-time data from live streams, sports, and more. With PlayFi, creators and brands can monetize and engage like never before. Join the future of live content. Visit playfi.ai today and discover how you can power the next era of play.
Switching gears a bit to Synthetix for a little bit, want to get your perspective on what's happening there. Was looking at TVL recently, and it had climbed to about $1 billion earlier this year, but now it's declined to about 300 million.
Yeah.
So what's explaining that?
Honestly, I really don't pay attention to Synthetix that much. Like I say that like in all seriousness, I don't have time. Like, I'm back to working 80 hours a week again, and it's early stage startup grind. I've had a couple of conversations with people recently, but like, it's not my focus.
Okay.
There are other people running it. I probably got some opinions about some things and like timing of when things should happen. I think the most interesting thing for us at Infinex is like, which network, because now Synthetix is on Arbitrum, right? And so there's a genuine choice of like Optimism, Arbitrum, Base. Infinex sort of needs to choose the network, and there's different trade-offs around like the way that they're setting up each of these different configurations and like what the collateral is. So as we get closer to potentially integrating Synthetix, we'll need to make some calls, but Synthetix is its own thing, and it runs, and it's got a robust governance framework. Like, it really doesn't need me at this point.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, and then last couple of questions on just DeFi more broadly. So what are you seeing that's exciting right now? Like, what's anything, like any innovation that that has come up or that hasn't maybe? Like maybe, yeah, like what are you excited about?
I'm excited to actually get people using DeFi. Like, the subset of people who are crypto people who've actually used DeFi and done on-chain transactions is like less than 10%, right? We, I think, have had a long period of time where like we're in the late part of last cycle. I was looking around going like, everyone's still on Binance. Like, we haven't actually brought them on chain. NFTs did. NFTs did a good job of getting people to like install MetaMask and do all of that stuff, because OpenSea was able to kind of get traction before the centralized exchanges were able to stand up NFT marketplaces, which had good sides and bad sides. But I'm excited for people to try DeFi. Like there are a lot of people out there who have not tried all of the DeFi projects, right? They haven't played around with Curve or Uniswap or whatever. So I think that we've got amazing protocols and they're really robust. They've had years of Lindy. They're hardened. They work really well. And it's time to make sure that everyone feels comfortable using them.
So do you think DeFi is ready for like a more mainstream?
100%. Sorry,
use?
it's ready at the protocol level. The protocols are ready. Like liquidity is there. You can put tens of millions of dollars into Aave, right? Like for the average user, that's like more than enough, right? Like, most people are not dumping $10 million worth of ETH into Aave, right? For the average user, it works. For the average user, it's cheap. Transaction execution is cheap. We've got multiple L2s. Liquidity is good. Spreads are still tight, even lately. It's a UX issue. We haven't created the onboarding process. These are crypto native people that have crypto. They've got crypto on centralized exchanges, right? It's a very easy hop for them to withdraw some USDT or USDC or ETH from Binance into Infinex and now suddenly have access to all of these different protocols in a way that they haven't to date. So I think it's ready, but it does need that UX layer. And so that's what we're trying to build.
What do you think will be the thing that gets centralized exchange users excited about DeFi? Like, what's the use case?
I think that speculation is still the thing, right? Like the people who are on centralized exchanges right now are there for speculation, right? We have, I would argue, more fun speculative things to do in DeFi, right? Certainly, more efficient ways to do things, right? Cheaper ways to do things, more efficient ways to get leverage, et cetera. So, there are a whole range of things that I'm sure people would love to play around with on chain, but for whatever reason, don't feel comfortable, right? I'm sure there's still people who are waiting for the latest meme coin or whatever to get listed on Binance before they, decide to buy it, right? You can go to pump.fun, like the source is there, right? So whether or not you think that that's a good use of people's time, if people want speculation, that's one of the use cases, right? And until we can pull people off centralized exchanges and like get everyone on chain and have self-custody, I think we just haven't done our job. From a DeFi perspective. And so I feel a very strong obligation as an early DeFi founder, like the job's not done yet. Building the protocol is not enough. You need to actually bring it to the people. We waited and waited and waited and hoped that they would come and they didn't. It's, the path forward is obvious, right? We need to go to them.
So for crypto holders on centralized exchanges, I think you're totally right. People are there to speculate. So how do we get users who are probably maybe not even on centralized exchanges, just like regular people who need access to financial services?
Yep.
Maybe they're in emerging economies. Maybe they need access to stable coins, or maybe they need to take out a loan and they don't have good credit, or maybe Aave would be a good place to be, but they have no idea how to use it. So how do we get to those people? I
think for someone who doesn't have crypto, getting on chain still requires an on-ramp, right? You still need fiat on-ramps and off-ramps. There are, I built an on-ramp, right? Back in the day, we allowed people to buy Bitcoin with cash, right? From 2015. So I know what that looks like. I know the challenges of that. We need to first prove, in my view, right? Certainly, this is my view on Infinex, right? Infinex needs to prove that we work for existing Binance users who have crypto. If we can't convince them to move over and that the UX is better and that being on chain is better, we haven't really demonstrated that we should be doing stuff for retail users who are not in the crypto ecosystem, right? If we can solve that problem and we can genuinely bring people on chain and have the majority of people in crypto doing things on chain instead of doing something in someone's database, then I think we can start to have the conversation about how do we go and solve emerging markets and stablecoin and payment rails. I think we have all, for a very long time, had a view that like international remittance is a thing that should happen in stable coins, et cetera, right? But it's hard to do it through a centralized exchange. You need on-ramps. There's still friction. Like we're not going to solve every problem, but if we can solve the onboarding and UX and security and self-custody problems, I think a whole bunch of people will turn up at the last mile to solve those problems. There's not really an incentive right now to try. There's a lot of different on-ramps, who are doing a good job, but the addressable market is still too small, right? I think that if we can really, make a credible case that we are as easy to use as Facebook, right, and that like genuinely people can get crypto and do things in crypto safely, for 1 billion people. The last mile of how to get in and out, like that problem will be solved very quickly. The incentive will be there, but it's just not been there. We're in our own little bubble at the moment.
Okay, so success for you looks like getting people from Binance onto Infinex first.
Yes.
And
that's step one. If we can't do that,
right,
we haven't earned anything else, right? If we can't convince someone who is trading on Binance daily to move on chain, then we haven't done the job.
Right. Okay. And then for kind of the next few months, where do you expect to be in that goal?
I think we expect to get through this bootstrapping phase, right? The kind of growth phase, and early adoption, early enthusiast people who really want to participate and like feel strongly about different, trade-offs in security, et cetera. We want to get all those people engaged, right? Those are the advocates. Those are the people that say, yes, I've read through the source code and like this is truly non-custodial, right? If you don't have those people's attention, they're the ones who are on X talking about different trade-offs and making recommendations of what's safe, what's not. You need that group of people. If we don't have them, it's hard to then go out to the wider crypto market. But if we can get that and we can get people engaged and really validate that this is actually the right set of trade-offs, because everything is trade-offs, right? And they're definitely trade-offs that we're making. But if people come to the conclusion that this makes sense, then we can start rolling out integrations. And the integrations that we'll probably start off with is spot trading. Centralized exchanges all kind of emerged out of spot trading, right? And if we can do that, I think that the competitive advantage we have is we can tap into everything that's on chain. We don't need to go and build infra for all of this stuff, right? If there's some new novel thing, we can just plug straight into it and let people. That's the benefit of having an on-chain backend.
Right.
Because our backend is on-chain, we have access to everything that's on-chain. Binance can't do that. It takes a long time for them to take something that's on-chain and bolt it into their centralized, ecosystem.
Nice. Okay. Well, this has been amazing. Great to learn more about Infinex, and we'll be following and covering it on the Defiant.
Amazing.
Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.